Building software robots is usually going to involve stringing together complex sequences and interacting with a variety of data. I can guarantee you that there are going to be times where you want to slowly step through your logic to examine that it's doing the right thing and that the correct data is being handled. There will be times when your robot is behaving erratically and it won't immediately make sense why this is happening. In cases like this, it's very important that you have strong debugging skills and you know how to use the UiPath tool to allow you to debug efficiently. If you want to follow along in this lecture, make sure you go back to section 1 and go down to this end-to-end demo that I did. In there, I've attached a resource, and you can open that project in UiPath and do the same thing that I'm doing. Along with opening that project, you'll want to go into your C drive and create a directory called robot files, and then add a few text documents. In my case, I've added text to some of them and not added text to other files. So you can put as many documents in here as you want to. Just make sure they're text documents. So over here in UiPath, I've gone to the Start tab, I've used Open, and I've navigated to my C Development UiPath My First Robot directory. That's where I stored that project. And when I double click on main.xaml, it opens the project. You might want to go ahead and click this play button to make sure that your robot runs. And when you do, the robot will disappear and come back. And then you'll go into that robot files directory and you'll see that there's a results.txt file containing the results that the robot emitted. I'm going to delete that file after every run. To give myself a little more screen real estate while doing these debugging demos, I'm going to hide the activities and properties and outline windows by clicking on these little pins here in each window respectively. And you can get those back later by clicking Activities and then pinning it back down, and the same thing respectively with Properties and Outline. Now that we've got some room to stretch out, I'm going to go over here to this Execute tab, and I'll just draw your attention to the fact that you can do a normal run of the robot using this Run button or using F5, but in this lecture we're going to be focusing on this Debug button here, or using F7. Before we actually run the debugger, let's talk about this Options button right here. When I click on this, you can see that we have the ability to log activities, highlight activities, and highlight elements. I'm going to demonstrate these bottom two because highlight elements is going to depend on UiPath automating another application that's visible on the screen. We're just opening and reading text files, so there will be no elements to highlight. Before we start, I'm going to double click on my Execute tab here to keep it open. And the first thing I'll have you do is click on Open Logs. This will open up a Windows directory buried down here in your user account, app data, local UiPath logs, and it will have one or more log files in it. I'm going to delete all my log files and close up that window. So first, I'm going to demonstrate running the robot again by clicking Run. And you can see in my output directory here that I did get a results file indicating that the robot has run. I'm going to delete that again just to get rid of it. And I'll draw your attention to this output window down here at the bottom. When I click on this, that window is resizable. You can make it larger or smaller. And notice that we have two entries, My First Robot execution started and ended. Now you're going to find that this is corroborated if you click on Open Logs, and you can see that this log file was generated, and if we open it up, we see that it has those same two lines in it with timestamps. So I'll delete that log and close that window. Now again, over here on the debug options, none of these things are checked. If I was to select one of these things, you'll see that there's a checkbox that shows up next to it. So I'll uncheck that again. None of them are checked. So when I run this debug, you're going to see that this output window will briefly pop up and you'll see a bunch of steps flying by. See those two steps that went by? I can confirm that my robot ran again. I'll delete my results. And I'll draw your attention back down here to the output, and notice we have those same two lines, and if we open our log file, again we have two lines. So I'll delete that log, close the window, and now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the options and turn on log activities. Now when I run debug again, you'll see many more things fly by, and when I open the output window, you see that there's a line that represents the start and end of every activity. So as I scroll through, now I've got a much longer list of stuff. And again, I can turn on my timestamps if I want to by clicking that button on the left. So this is really great information if the robot is stalling in some particular place. You can see exactly how far it got and where it stopped. If I open my logs, you can see now those same things are inside our log file. And there's actually much more information about each item in the log file. You can see the log file even contains things like the values of the data as they were being processed. So I will close and delete that. Close this window. And as you recall, when I ran that debugger, everything flew by pretty quickly. So there's a way to fix that. What we can do is we can click on this slow step icon, and notice that's dark gray since you've activated it. And then we can go to options again and say highlight activities. So now you can see both of those two things are checked. And highlight activities is simply going to put a yellow box around each of these activities as they are being processed. I'm not going to let the robot run all the way through. I'm going to click the stop button in the middle, but notice I can use F12 to do that. So here we go. I click on debug, and I'm going to resize this output window a little bit smaller. So notice the robot is executing much more slowly now, step by step, and you can watch each of the activities be highlighted, and you can also see down here in the output window the exact line of what's being executed at the moment. So this is a great way to watch your robot and get a visual for what exactly is happening at any given moment. So I'll click on stop or F12, and you can see that the robot terminates. Again, if we open logs, you're going to see that we have all that information in our log, which is great. I'll delete that file and close the window. And I'm also going to delete my results file. Of course, if I click on slow step again, that will speed the robot up, but we're still going to see our activities get highlighted. So that's a way to watch the robot work through the activities in real time. I'll press the F7 key to begin. So you can see how fast those things flashed by, and it gives you a great sense of how quickly this robot can work. In the next video, I'm going to talk about setting breakpoints on any given activity and taking a closer look during execution. But what I'll show you is, if I'm on slow step here, and I'm in debug mode, as I'm watching this thing execute, I have the ability to hit this break button. And when I do that, UiPath is going to stop in its tracks so you can examine some things. And this is very similar to setting a breakpoint in advance, but this is something you can do in real time if you detect that the robot is doing something odd and you want to dive into the locals and look at the values to see what's going on. So in the next lecture, I'll talk more about setting a breakpoint and inspecting these various values during runtime.